Evening, Paul. It's been a progression, but what's allowed Andrew Kopp to take that next step in his development in terms of his offensive production?
He's really worked at it would be the simple answer. I think that he spends an awful lot of time trying to develop that part of his game. I think his talent and his gift is the defensive part of the game that comes naturally to him, and he spent an awful lot of time developing his hands, picking up pucks along the boards, just worked at it. I also think we've talked about this last game that line is in a lot of ways built for his style of play. He can play with other styles, but because he's so strong defensively, that those guys kind of have a unique game. They can play against the other team's best, or in a different match that was going on tonight, they can be pretty dominant over the last two games.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Andrew has 5 goals, I guess, now in his last 3 games. Before that, 1 goal in 23. I guess you can't really explain that.
No, you know what? It's so true. Like, I do think, that the players talk about that confidence, and sometimes it's the confidence to shoot the puck, right? But it's not like there was decisions for him tonight. It's a rebound in the slot. You know he's going to shoot that puck. But other guys, and I would use maybe an extreme example or a more obvious example would be Nikolai Ehlers, right? So when he's confident, he's always looking to shoot the puck, and when he's not, his whole game changes. With Andrew, it's I think in parts of this, the 2 power play goals is a bit of a version of it. That line, when it's going, there's more action right around the net, right? When they're doing the right things. So they find themselves there, and he's willing to go to the net front. So I think that line's had an uptick over the last 2 weeks. I would think they started to get stronger and stronger. So more offensive zone time, more of those plays around the net, and then he has the opportunity. So with Andrew, it's not. I find him overpassing the puck when he's not scoring. I didn't think he was doing that. I think his line. I think those guys will score kind of almost by committee. That the line has a big piece to it. He may not admit that, but tonight anyway. But the line's part of it.
We'll go next to Jamie Thomas from 680 CJOB Jets Radio. Go ahead, Jamie.
Hey, Paul. What does this say about the development for Andrew as a player? You go back even a few years ago, he's centering the 4th line and fighting for ice time, and now here he is with a 4-goal game and double-digit goal season.
It was a really good place for him to start, though, right? Like I said, his skill set and his gift is his defensive reads are really, really strong. So that's the right place to break into a league, and he's very unique in that 4th line first year player that we didn't show any video to because he just didn't make any mistakes. And he's got a really high defensive IQ, but I do think that he's really worked at his offensive game, right? Spent an awful lot of time on the ice handling pucks, taking passes. I think his relationship with Mark Scheifele's helped that. I think that they spent a lot of time working on those things. So while it may not be the first strength that he has, he's developed it, I think, now into a strength.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul. I'm interested. I'm sure you faced this during your career, but when you've got a deep team like you have that is able to score up and down the lineup, you've talked time and time again about the different lines creating offense in different ways. What's the challenge as a coach in trying to match up against a team that's not just deep, but is able to bring offense in very drastic styles?
So you just try to find strengths. So it was an unusual matchup tonight. You noticed that Lowry and Thompson took the big bulk of the defensive zone faceoffs, and then Dubois, who had a hard time in the faceoff circle, but he and Scheifele's line would then take the offensive zone draws. So sometimes it's just you're trying to match styles where you can find an advantage. The Lowry line's unusual in that sometimes if you can get him in the 3-hole, which doesn't happen very much tonight, but it happened here. They can be pretty dominant, right? When they're a little bit of the pressures come off them to check, where they can get out and start thinking about playing in the offensive zone, and it's not purely defense first. Those 3 guys has spent a big bulk of their time just shutting down, just trying to limit the other team's best players. So they got a little unique look tonight. Mark normally now is, because of Stastny being there and so many, this is face-off driven because we have a lefty and righty and center will take the other team's best in those positions. And then I'm trying to find a place for Dubois' line, who at times have been really, really good. I didn't think tonight was their A game. I thought they were close to a bunch of good things, but they couldn't kind of break it loose. So the Thompson line is the interesting one. It's kind of started as a 7-8 minute line. And I started with the 6 minute mark with the goalie out. I had Scheif go on the right-hand draw. I had Lowry come out next. But I had Thompson up. They were coming out with the goalie out because they had just earned it in their last 5 or 6 games. They've really taken a step forward.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. Just kind of following up on some of these matchup thoughts. When a line like Kopp and Lowry's and Appleton's line switches the matchup that they're getting, does that change? Do you like to change then what defenses that they play in front of, and whether that's something that you're actively doing or not? How does that pairing that they play?
Yeah, so it does. That would be, Murat, that would be the thing that doesn't really change. If the game's even or you're ahead, so you have your match against the other team's forward units, and that's the harder match, right? In terms of, I mean, not more difficult. That's the one that you're trying to reach. You want your D match, and then and that's true of even or better. But if you're behind it, then you're starting to think about getting your more offensive defensemen behind your more offensive lines if you can. So it does change the pairings. But you know what I liked on each of them now. I like the way they move the puck a little bit tonight. I think, Pionk's been doing that. Morrissey does that, but the Logan Stanley moves the puck pretty well and has the ability to get pucks to the net. So I don't feel that if we got into a Scheifele kind of Stanley DeMello grouping, I wouldn't be afraid of that. Wouldn't bother me.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from The Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Paul, the scoreboard says 9-1 here these last 2 games. Where's your team's game at right now?
You know what? That stat is a little bit like our record against Vancouver. And I saw it on one of the boards here going into last night's game, something like 18-3 or 17-3. And I would never have thought that. And I felt that about these 2 games. So it's good. There were big chunks of a game again that we liked an awful lot, but no one's asked a Connor Hellebuck question here tonight, and that was some ridiculous goaltending. So I feel that way about our Vancouver games over the last 3 or 4 years. I've never felt comfortable going into them. I think they work their butts off. They get a ton of chances to score. They're hitting the outside of posts, and we're hitting the inside of posts. I mean, it's been a longer run than that. We've probably done a little better than I'm giving my team credit for, because we're probably 19-3 or something like that now. And that's never been the way it felt against Vancouver. But for whatever reason, you get there, and I guess we've been pretty good.
And final question to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul, Logan Stanley talked about his first fight. It sounded like he enjoyed it. He was hoping that he gave the team a little bit of a boost. Did you see that? And seeing a man throw them the way he did, what does that have you thinking about his potential to affect games in the future?
We're just still learning about Logan. His game is right for a first-year defenseman. He's been really solid for us. That element will eventually come to pretty much every defenseman, certainly the bigger men. Net front, the battles net front will usually incite something like that. The willingness to do it doesn't have to be his calling card, but the willingness to do it is important. A little bit of a confidence builder for him in that he's a kind of a player favorite right now because he moves the puck and he gets it to the net, and the forwards really like that. Having that physicality in his game changes the way our back end looks.